From sliding down the side of a pyramid, to hunting a target amidst the madness of a sandstorm, to casually walking through beautifully recreated historical settings like the Library of Alexandria, Assassin's Creed Origins is a story full of secrets worthy of Egypt's last royal protector, Bayek of Siwa. It's also the series' first full-on role-playing game, and mixes a delightful sense of discovery with an addictive leveling system. I spent 30 hours finishing the main campaign, which took me just over half of the expansive and beautiful map. It's the biggest and most connected ever in an Assassin's Creed game, featuring multiple cities with their own unique cultures, different gods, politics, race relations, and prejudices to uncover. They're also distinct in architecture and environment, and that makes a significant time commitment one that's consistently varied and surprising. Refreshingly, I discovered new areas organically, through the story and free exploration, rather than through the series' traditional structure of climbing to viewpoints to have them unveiled for you. The exploration is made even more impressive by the lack of loading screens, with the exception of some story cutscenes and if you choose to fast travel. While the main story is delightfully mystical on its own, Origins also has the strongest mission design in any Assassin's Creed game to back it up. From collecting clues to solve mysteries, to gladiatorial arena fighting, to Black Flag-style ship-to-ship combat, each series of missions feels like a self-contained story with its own custom-built gameplay. Another highlight of the series is hidden temples, which, without spoiling anything, tie into Assassin's Creed's overarching sci-fi story in interesting ways. Of course, this being an Assassin's Creed game, there's a whole lot of parkour and climbing in Origins, and it's more seamless than ever. The act of climbing feels almost as passive as running, and while that does remove some of the challenge that existed in previous games, it takes a fair amount of frustration out the door with it. There's definitely a renewed challenge in the combat though, which has been significantly rebuilt. Having to know when to block, when to dodge, and when to parry creates a whole lot more thoughtful tension than has existed in previous games, and there's a fair amount of enemy variety. You also have the ability to lock on to one specific target at a time, which only made stealth segments more precise, but swapping between targets unfortunately didn't work reliably while brawling in a larger group. Then there are weapons, which vary in type, rarity, and effect as part of a proper loot system. Once I'd picked them up and learned their uses, I always kept 3 different bow types handy to swap between, and having those kinds of choices always helped with boss fights and tougher enemies. It's a constant decision-making process, and the combat is much richer for it. While unlocking new abilities and story missions generally happens at a smooth pace, there is quite a lot of grinding to be done. For the most part, I enjoyed it, and there are multiple ways to work on leveling up, but a couple of times the recommended level for a new main quest mission appeared as several levels above where I was when I first unlocked it. This stymied progress can be a little frustrating, especially when you have to do some low-level side quests for smaller rewards to level up because you can't find any at your level. That said, one of my favorite things to do is infiltrate high-level fortresses. For me, the biggest appeal of Origins' introduction of the level system is in that optional, self-induced challenge. On the other hand, finding a legendary weapon isn't as dramatic as it is in a game like Destiny 2. These legendaries are easy to come by in main story quests, and their effects just aren't that different to regular weapons. Most just boost your damage, so there are no real trade-offs. Decisions for clothing and mounts are even easier to make since they're purely aesthetic, and there are limited choices, unless you opt to buy more as part of Origin's microtransaction system. On the topic of microtransactions, maps revealing all of the collectible locations and most of the outfits and mounts are locked behind Helix coins, which you can only buy with real-world money. Things like supplies and money can be purchased too, but those are easy enough to find in Origins' Egypt through hunting or other fun side activities that it'd kind of be a waste to spend money on them. As for performance, I did have some minor issues with environments popping in and more bugs than the average Assassin's Creed game, but it should be mentioned that Ubisoft says some additional fixes will come in the Day 1 patch.
As a hottie.
Assassin's Creed Origins is a deep dive into a truly stunning realization of ancient Egypt, with a rich series of cultures, genuine characters, and more mission variety than any other game in the series. The combat is challenging and thoughtful, and there are enough different weapon types and enough enemy variety to keep you thinking. The RPG elements encourage challenges of their own, and even despite a handful of bugs, I desperately want to keep playing. For more on Assassin's Creed, you can check out our graphics comparison, our video on the history behind Origins, and the first 18 minutes of gameplay right here on IGN.
I have no job for that.